All right, let's talk about metabolism. It's one of those words you hear everywhere, right? But today, we're going to cut through all the noise. We're moving past the quick fixes and the myths to get to the real science of how your body's engine actually works. I mean, who hasn't seen those videos? You know the ones. Quick cuts, big text on the screen that says fat burning mode. They always promise some secret trick, some easy hack to unlock your body's potential. And honestly, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? And the list of hacks is always so simple. Never skip breakfast, they tell you, while showing a gorgeous shot of eggs and avocado. Drink green tea instead of coffee. The list of these supposed shortcuts just goes on and on. But the truth? Well, it's a little more complicated.
Okay, so let's really dig in. We're going to take all those promises, the magic teas, the meal timing rules, the whole shebang, and actually see what the research says about this incredible system that powers literally everything you do. First things first, before we can even start busting myths, we have to be on the same page. So what is metabolism really? Let's take a look under the hood and decode what we're actually talking about here.
Let's start with a really clear definition from Harvard Health Publishing. At its very core, metabolism is just the process of turning the food you eat into fuel. It's the energy that powers everything from your heart beating to you just thinking a thought. So where does all that energy actually go? Well, this chart breaks it down perfectly. That huge slice of the pie, that's your resting metabolic rate, or RMR. That's the energy your body burns just to keep the lights on, when you're doing absolutely nothing. Then you have physical activity. And that tiny little sliver, that's the energy it takes just to digest your food. This really shows you how important that baseline RMR is.
Okay, now that we've got the basics down, let's jump into the biggest area of confusion and promises, food. This is where all those hacks live. But can you really eat certain things or eat at specific times to rev up your metabolic engine? Let's find out.
The breakfast battle. This is one of the oldest rules in the book, right? So on one hand, the claim is that skipping breakfast puts you into this fasting state that slows your metabolism way down. But on the other hand, there's this really interesting concept called metabolic flexibility. That's your body's ability to switch between fuels, like using carbs or fats. For some people, fasting might actually improve that. The big takeaway here? It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Okay, so if meal timing isn't so simple, what about all those superfoods that are supposed to send our calorie burn through the roof? I'm sure you've heard these. The idea that something in chili peppers or green tea can just flip a switch and put your metabolism into overdrive. It's an incredibly popular idea. But here comes the reality check, and this is straight from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Yes, there might be a temporary, tiny little bump in your metabolic rate, but the effect just isn't significant. It's not going to make a real-world difference. There's just no magic food. And this is a perfect example of how science actually works. You know, a huge review of 15 different studies on green tea found the results were, well, promising, but they couldn't draw a firm conclusion. The evidence just isn't strong enough yet to back up those huge claims. So if these food hacks aren't the answer, then what is? Let's shift our focus away from all these tiny effects and talk about the things that truly, genuinely move the needle on your metabolism. This is it. This is the big one. If you want to forget all the myths and do one thing that will have a real, meaningful impact on your metabolic rate, it's building and maintaining muscle. So why is muscle so incredibly important? Well, it's pretty simple. Muscle tissue is just more metabolically active than fat tissue. It burns more calories 24/7, even when you're just sitting on the couch or sleeping. So by adding muscle with strength training, you're directly increasing that giant slice of the pie we saw earlier, your resting metabolic rate. Okay, so building muscle is a fantastic way to support your metabolism. But there's another factor, one that most of us totally ignore, that can completely sabotage all that hard work. So what is it? That's right, poor sleep. It is an absolute metabolism killer. When you don't get enough quality sleep, it throws your body's internal clocks, your circadian rhythms, into total chaos. And this directly messes with the hormones and processes that control your metabolic health. And the impact is just staggering. Get this, in one study, people were put on a calorie-restricted diet. Just by cutting back their sleep, the amount of weight they lost as fat dropped by a whopping 55%. Let that sink in. They were losing more muscle and holding on to more fat, all because of bad sleep. So here's a quick rundown of how that happens. Sleep deprivation totally messes with your hunger hormones, making you feel way hungrier and less satisfied. It can make you eat hundreds of extra calories without even realizing it. And to top it all off, other research shows it can directly lower your resting metabolic rate. It's just a perfect storm for metabolic problems.
Okay, so we've busted some myths and we've talked about what really matters, muscle and sleep. So how do we put it all together? The goal here is to shift our entire mindset away from hacking our bodies and towards supporting them. This table sums it all up pretty perfectly. Instead of chasing food hacks, the real focus is on consistent, quality nutrition. But check out that last row, because this is so important. When you go on super low-calorie diets, your body can fight back with something called adaptive thermogenesis, which is just a fancy way of saying your metabolism slows down because it thinks it's starving. The better focus is always on a sustainable calorie deficit, not a crash diet. And this really brings us to the most important point of this whole thing. A healthy metabolism isn't built on one secret trick. It's the end result of a healthy system, a system that's supported by consistent exercise, quality sleep, and a balanced diet. So I want to leave you with this one final thought. We spend so much energy trying to force our bodies to follow all these external rules and hacks, but what if the real secret isn't a secret at all? What if it's just learning to listen to your body's signals of hunger, fullness, and fatigue? What could change if you started supporting your system instead of trying to outsmart it?